Open up your Bible as you would to Job chapter 9. Job chapter 9. I hope you all had a chance to read through chapters 9 and chapter 10. Put it up here on the screen. You may remember we've been working through this. This is going to be Job's reply to Bildad. Now, you remember Job's friend, they sat there without a word for 7 days, and then finally Job gave that first lament in chapter 3. And then Eliphaz had the first response. And it wasn't the comforting words that Job was looking for at all. In fact, if you remember, Eliphaz was thinking, Job, I've had a vision. And in this vision, I've recognized that anyone who suffers any kind of calamity in this life shows that you've got sin. Because only sinners receive this kind of problem. So you must have sinned. And Job, so you need to repent. Job, I'm sure Job was not expecting this, and so he replied back to that. After that reply, Bildad spoke. He essentially said the same thing, that there's sin that he is not repenting of, and that he needs to repent of it. And he didn't hearken to a vision, but he said, look at our forefathers. We see the same teaching from them, which isn't exactly true. But they're taking some truths and they're making them absolute, some general proverbial statements that are generally true, but they made them absolutely true. And now Job is going to reply to Bildad in chapters 9 and chapter 10. So I want to break these down, each one of them, into 3 parts. So let's look at our first 12 verses of chapter 9, and then we'll examine these scriptures. Then Job answered, "In truth, I know that this is so, but how can a man be in the right before God? If one wished to dispute with him, he could not answer him once in 1,000 times. Wise in heart and mighty in strength, who has defied him without harm? It is God who removes mountains, they know not how, when he overturns them in his anger. Who shakes the earth out of its place, and its pillars tremble? Who commands the sun not to shine, and sets a seal upon the stars? Who alone stretches out the heavens and tramples down the waves of the sea? Who makes the bear, Orion, and the Pleiades, and the chambers of the south? Who does great things, unfathomable and wondrous works without number? Were he to pass by me, I would not see him. Were he to move past me, I would not perceive him. Were he to snatch away, who could restrain him? Who could say to him, what are you doing?" We're going to recognize in this chapter that Job is going to reach a very low point. But he opens up his response to Bildad by saying, in truth, I know that this is so. And that this is hearkening back to Bildad's thesis that God does not pervert justice. He knows that. And then he restates Eliphaz's earlier statement from chapter 4 when he says, how can man be in the right before God? And as Job meditates on the greatness of God and the universe, he realizes just how small man is. The interrogative of some of these words indicates that Job does not think there is any likelihood that he could ever possibly win any kind of case against the Lord. But his conviction that God does not pervert justice kind of prods him to really contemplate the impossible. What if I got to go up there and I got to have a few words with God? How would that work out? So you got this courtroom kind of setting, right? And God plays all the roles in the courtroom. Let's say you go to a courtroom, you're looking for to go in there to try your case, and the person is the accused. God, you go in there as God. He's the accuser, he's the witness, he's the bailiff, he's the jury, and he's the judge. Are you going to win? No way. No way. And it was that realization that causes Job to discern that the futility of contending with God. This is impossible. Wise in heart, mighty in strength, who has defied him without harm? What's the answer to that? Nobody. No one. He mentions also in verses 5 through 9 that the bear, the Orion, and the Pleiades. What is that? When you see those three words, what comes to your mind? Anybody know?
Star constellation.
Yeah, it's a star constellation, exactly. Some commentators think that's pointing to the Big Dipper and other constellations, the Hunter, and a cluster of 6 or 7 stars visible to our eye. Job knew he is the maker, he is the sustainer of all these things. So he states again in verse 10 that God does great things, unfathomable and wondrous works without number. That's almost word for word what Eliphaz said in chapter 5. And Job passed from that attribution, that real praise that he gives to the Lord, and he perceives as a negative side, though, of this wondrous side of God. He asserts that God is unknowable. God is really out of reach. No one has the power to ask God, what are you doing? Now, we're going to notice he's going to do a lot of this questioning and conviction, especially when we get to chapter 10, where he's actually going to venture out and do this to kind of throw questions at God. And who am I to ask is pretty much what he's saying. But he is going to ask. Do you remember how, if you remember reading through the book of Job, and when God does finally come onto the scene, what was his first statement to God, or to Job? God's first statement to Job, you remember?
After what had happened?
Yeah, after everything here, when God finally reveals himself and comes down and actually speaks to Job, what's his first statement? You remember? I'll give you the beginning. Gird up your loins. You remember what it said next? Gird up your loins and you answer me. I'm going to give you the chance to do it, Job. Where were you when I created everything? And he gives him that chance. Okay, I will give you this chance in the courtroom. In other words, he's saying to Job, you were right in chapter 9. You are nobody to come up and question me and what I'm doing. But we'll get to that when we get over there, the chapter 39, I think it is. Verses 13 to 24, God strengthened his inaccessibility. These final couple of paragraphs of chapter 9 is his personal really complaint that Job makes here. We know Job is innocent. Job is quite sure that he was innocent of the charges that are being thrown at him so far by Eliphaz and by Bildad, but he could not prove it to their satisfaction without God declaring his innocence. That's the problem. He knows he's done nothing wrong. They don't believe him, but the only person who could really come down and show his innocence would be God. So he's looking around thinking, why isn't he doing this? Why is he doing this to me? Why is he allowing this to happen? And so verse 13, God will not turn back his anger. He feels the heavy burden of alienation from God. It may be like the alienation that Jesus felt, right? When he was up on the cross and God turned on him when he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? I always wonder about the correlation, maybe a parallel there for Job. And he's feeling left out, like God is abandoning him here where he has done nothing wrong. But then he also says something else there in verse 13. Beneath him crouched the helpers of Rahab. Anybody have a different word there than Rahab in their translation? I use the New American Standard. No? Everybody got Rahab? Anybody got a footnote on what the translators think that might mean? No? So some, not many, some commentators look at this and they think, well, Rahab, the harlot, that she was around during the time of the Israelites coming into the promised land there in Jericho. So Job must have been a contemporary with that time if he's bringing that up, or either after that time. But Rahab is used in the book of Psalms. It's also used in the book of Isaiah in two different ways. One is a word they use to describe Egypt. Actually, I think I had that written here. Yeah, in Isaiah chapter, is that right, Isaiah? Yep, Isaiah chapter 30, verse 7, and chapter 51, verse 9. Both of those spots, you see in Isaiah using it figuratively for Egypt. We can see that. And in the book of Psalms, in chapter 87 and 89, I think it is, it is used figuratively as a sea monster, Rahab. And so that is what I think he's talking about here, speaking of a sea monster. We'll see that in verse, did I read these? I don't think I did. God will not turn back his anger, verse 13. Beneath him crouch the helpers of Rahab. How then can I answer him and choose my words before him? For though I were right, I could not answer. I would have to implore the mercy of my judge. If I called and he answered me, I could not believe that he was listening to my voice. For he bruises me with a tempest and multiplies my wounds without cause. He will not allow me to get my breath, but saturates me with bitterness. If it is a matter of power, behold, he is the strong one. And if it is a matter of justice, who can summon him? Though I am righteous, my mouth will condemn me. Though I am guiltless, he will declare me guilty. Let's stop there. So he realizes he could not enter into a dispute with God. He just can't do it. God was both the accuser and his judge. Even if he called upon the Lord, how could he believe that he would answer him? This is one of the lowest points of alienation he felt. And this is why I think when the Lord first appears to him, this is why he says to him, gird up your loins and answer me. Because I'll answer back, Job. I want to give you the answer, but it's not what you want to hear because you were right. You have no place to stand before me and say anything. And he learns less because if you remember reading through it, does God explain to Job why he went through all that he went through? No, he does not explain it. And we will, again, get there when we get over there in the chapter 39. So, verses 21 to 24, Job's anger, his bitterness are seen here more than any other place. Destroys the guiltless and the wicked. He's talking about God. His assessment stands as a contrast to what Bildad claims. Remember what Bildad claimed? Who does God destroy? Only the guilty. Only the wicked. If you were righteous, if you were innocent, God would not destroy you. Job said, no, he destroys both. And in his case is, look at me. I am guiltless, but his friends do not believe that. So Job ends his charges against God by asking, if it is not he, God, then who is it? Since justice existed in the world and there was only one God, who else could possibly be responsible for his suffering? Now, what is Job saying? Let's look there at verse 24 again. Let's first start in verse 21 to 24. I am guiltless. I do not take notice of myself. I despise my life. It is all one. Therefore I say, he destroys the guiltless and the wicked. If the scourge kills suddenly, he mocks the despair of the innocent. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covers the faces of its judges. If it is not he, then who is it? He's asking if God is the one who's doing this. So what is Job saying? About his situation, what is he saying?
Well, God is the only judge of, and who am I to question his
Yeah.
decisions and his actions, and
Yeah.
there's not going to be anybody on the earth, and he is the only judge.
Yeah, he is saying that, Bildad, Eldad, you're right. I mean, God's the one letting this happen to me, but it's not because of any sin I've done. I don't know why. And who am I to question him? But it is God. I wish I knew why. I wish he would just get it over with and kill me, like he said a few chapters ago. Why does he wait? As if I'm some sort of great power that he needs to contend with me. Why don't he just kill me? Just snuff me out. But why make me suffer? He doesn't understand why. And now, verses 25 to 35, no mediator between it. I like this part. This is what I was hoping that we would get to tonight. I wasn't sure if we get to chapter 10, but let's read 25 to 35. Now my days are swifter than a runner. They flee away, they see no good, they slip by like reed boats, like an eagle that swoops on its prey. Though I say, I will forget my complaint, I will leave off my sad countenance and be cheerful. I am afraid of all my pains. I know that you will not acquit me. I am accounted wicked. Why then should I toil in vain? If I should wash myself with snow and cleanse my hands with lye, yet you would plunge me into the pit, and my own clothes would abhor me. For he is not a man as I am, that I may answer him, that we may go to court together. There is no umpire between us, who may lay his hand upon us both. Let him remove his rod from me, and let not dread of him terrify me. Then I would speak and not fear him. But I am not like that in myself. So verse 33. There is no umpire between us. Somebody got a different word other than umpire? Arbitrator. Yours says mediator? What version are you using? You don't know?
Yeah, NLT.
And, the New Literal Translation. Oh, that's good. And that's the word. It's the mediator. So is he right? Is this why he can't come before God and get good judgment? Because there is no mediator between them? I'm not going to answer this one for you. Think about it.
Well, there is none. At this point, there is no high priest or anybody that's interceding or
Right.
going to God and asking for forgiveness of sin or whatever.
That's true.
There isn't one.
Yeah.
By the way, this is one of the verses that Charles Milner used to say that God must have loved baseball. He talks about the umpire.
Yeah. So is he right? Does he need a mediator?
I think it's somewhat of a false premise.
Okay.
That assumes that God did something wrong, that he's wrong Job.
Okay.
If it's merely to help Job understand the context, then he may need a mediator.
Yeah. He doesn't know what's going on. Why? I know I'm guiltless. I know I've done no sin, and yet here I am. I'm still suffering, and I don't understand. And I can't go before him. If I only had someone to come in and umpire or mediate between us, do we have that today? Jesus does that for us. That's what he's looking for. He's looking for someone who could go up there before God and plead his case. Because if he goes up there, he's doomed. He knows that he's doomed. He can't stand before God. So he needs somebody. He doesn't know there's going to be a Christ coming that we know of. But he's thinking already right now, if I only had that, then I could go before him. If I just had a mediator, an umpire, someone to go before him in my for me. And so I see him doing that here. Job knew that all of us suffer when we sin. He initially responds to Bill that there in that very beginning, in truth, I know that this is so. He knew that everyone sins and that there are consequences of sin. He knew that people would reap what they sow. That's true. But he believed that God is no respecter of persons and that it rains on the just and on the unjust. And if that's true, then if bad things can go to the wicked and to the good as well. Bad things can happen. But he had been blessed, but now his life has been completely turned upside down. He knows God's in control of all things, so he's asking, why is this happening to me? He knew that a sinful man cannot stand before God, a holy God, without a mediator, as we were just saying. He would have liked to turn the tables, maybe you could say, and he would like to be able to subpoena God, but he can't do that. That's a false premise. But he knew that no one else has a right, though, to demand that God answer his questions. Of course, you'll learn that lesson when he gets over there to chapter 39. So he asked that question, though, in chapter 9. What are you doing? That is, however, what Job really wanted to know, he wanted to. I guess that's pretty much it. What are you doing? Why are you doing this to me? Theo, Alex, and myself, Mick, and Gary eventually, well, we'll run into this. I've run into it many times. I don't know, maybe you have, Gary, I don't know. Have you ever run into somebody who asked, why is God letting this happen to me? Why is God letting this happen? I've heard that question asked me so many times. How do you answer that? Alex?
I always think of Matthew chapter 5, where it says, God causes the sun to shine on the good and the bad, and he sends the rain on those who do good and those who do bad.
Right.
You know, sometimes it's just a matter of happenstance. Bad things happen to good people, and bad things happen to bad people. And there's nothing that we're going to do to change that. In fact, I almost feel like if God allowed our existence on the earth to be just rainbows and butterflies our entire life, there would be nothing to look forward to in the next life. If life was so easy and so gentle and we never had any difficulties, what would there would be no looking forward to a life where we had no pain, where we had no death.
Sounds like there would be no sin if you had a world like that. Like the Garden of Eden.
Right.
And so that's impossible. And if he's going to give us all a chance to choose to do the right thing, then he's going to let everyone have that chance. And when they sin, when they do wrong, that's going to affect everybody. And so, yeah, bad things are going to happen because we live in a fallen world. And God is the potter, and so he's going to make some vessels for honor and some for dishonor.
And it's easy to make good decisions when everything is going so good for you.
Yeah.
But man, it's when things get tough, what decisions are you going to make then? How are you going to act? How are you going to behave when you're faced in times of difficulty? And that's what really tries the hearts of men
Yeah.
in God's eyes.
Is your faith fortified to handle it? Have you put on the armor and are you ready for those difficult times? Have you endured enough up to this point to be ready for the more difficult times? And Job is. I mean, man, you couldn't get it any worse, and yet he does not waver. I've done nothing wrong. I don't know what's happening. I don't understand why God's letting this happen, but I wish I could go up there and ask him, but even if I could, what would I say? What can I say before the juror, the judge, the bailiff, the accuser? I mean, there's nothing I could say before him. Because he knew how great God is. I think it's really faith building, as you're getting at, to read through his description of power all the way through here in chapter 9, just how great God is. He also knew that he could not pretend. He couldn't pretend about what was happening. God gave him life. He already said there in verse 21 of chapter 1, the Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. But Job does say in chapter 9, verse 21, that he despised his life. It's sad. In the next chapter, he's in chapter 10, verse 1, I loathe my own life. Like you said, Alex, I mean, I would love to have my life to be rainbows and roses and easy all the way through. That'd be great to have that, but that's not life. Job would have liked to forget his troubles, pretend they didn't exist, but he knew that ignoring the problems, verse 27, changes nothing. It changes nothing. He was looking for some way to bring his case before God. So in his mind, as he was thinking this through, thinking about what Eliphaz said and Bildad said, if I only had an umpire, if I only had a mediator, somebody who could go up there, talk to God, and then come talk to me, then I could relate to him who could take my case before God. If I only had that, that's intelligence. That's someone whose faith, because I think he was, the time of Job was during the patriarchs, before even possibly the flood, so the law hasn't even come. And for him to see and recognize this guy knew what was going on, Job. He had an amazing understanding. Now I think we ought to be very thankful that we were on this side of all of the three ages, that we found ourselves here. Have you ever thought, I wish I could have seen the 10 plagues of Egypt? Would that have been amazing to see? To see, but not be in, maybe, right? Yeah, I see it on TV. Don't really want to go through. I mean, I think it would have been amazing to watch the Red Sea part. All right, go walk. What? Yeah, go on down there. Through it? Okay. That takes trust in the Lord. And it's here, and these people not saw these things, they experienced these things, and yet, as we talked about not that just the other day, even though Israel, or when we're going through Jude, even though Israel saw all these amazing things, they still rejected God going into the promised land. Said no. Here's Job, and all he is living life. Everything's going great, and then he loses everything. His own friends comes and tells him he sinned, but he never turned his back on God. He questioned about why this is happening, but he never sinned through all of it. I was hoping to get through chapter 10. We got through 9, so we'll have to pick up chapter 10 next week. I encourage you to read through it. Take a look at it. That's another chapter that is, he turns from speaking about God, he's going to talk about himself here. This is where he hits his lowest point. After this, with his conversation with the next friend, he's going to start ramping up his that's not true tactics to his friends and holding firm his faith. But this is where we're going to see less of this kind of loathing and hoping I die attitude from Job going forward. This will be the last one. So read through chapter 10. Go ahead and also read the next, Zophar, I think is that, yeah, he rebukes in chapter 11. We may do both next week. Unless there's any comments or questions.
I was just
Alex.
thinking about, I love reading Job because it has all these descriptions of the physical world that he shouldn't have known anything about. That's where some of our scientists have made some of our biggest discoveries, such as like the Laurentian abyss. We didn't know that existed, but Job describes it later on. And that made people start looking for it. Well, what do you mean? There's like canyons in the deep of the sea.
Yeah, rivers running through the ocean.
Yeah, rivers running, and so they start looking for these things, and that's how some of them, we read the history of how do these discoveries get made. But one of the things he says in this chapter is, it is God who removes the mountains.
Earthquakes.
They know not how, when he overturns them in his anger. And I just wonder, like, what he means by that.
I think it's earthquakes. I think he's talking about the great earthquakes that are occurring, is what I
He
believe.
seems to talk about earthquakes in the verses after that, and that almost, to me, it almost seemed like something separate. So I was like, man.
Oh, it could be.
Is that earthquakes, or is he talking about some events that have happened in the past that we don't have any history of anymore?
That's right. Well, like, where did he get the information about the rivers running through the ocean, the trenches, and that Earth is sitting out there in nothing and being held up in the universe, and that it's a sphere and not flat? Because some people say, well, this was written down for our understanding, and so the writer of this put this in, God put it into his mind, maybe. What other possibility? I don't think it's one of those. I think there's another possibility. If he was before the flood, could it be that maybe information was handed down from Adam? That Adam knew and understood these things because he was the first being, and God talked to him about how the earth was made, how he made all these things. Because remember, what did he? God brought all the animals and he named them. Maybe God also went through it and said, "Here's the world I created. Here's how I created. Here's what I did." He told him all about it. He told him about farming. He told him about all the foods that he knew, or he just put it in his mind, and he passed those things down to other generations. And Job heard about these things from him because he got it from the Creator. So he knows a lot. And I think that's my belief. It's just speculation, but that's what I think is going on here, that God gave it to Adam, and Adam handed those things down to other people, and Job was part of those lines somewhere along the line, and that's where he probably got it from. But food for thought. Read chapters 10, chapter 11. We're going to have the closing song.